Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 417 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. I'm Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and we have the full crew here this week. Kicking things off with the owner of MTG Goldfish, Richard. How are you this fine Monday, Richard?
Hey Seth, morning. A lot of spoilers this week.
Yes, we have so many new cards to talk about, but before we get into that, we got another co-host in Krim, how are you today? Good morning.
Morning. Yeah, pretty excited because this set is looking amazing.
So good. This set looks, oh my goodness, this set looks so spectacular. I'm blown away, and we're going to spend pretty much the entire cast talking about new cards from Phyrexia All Will Be One. We are right in the middle of spoiler season. Got a few more days to go, but we have a ridiculous amount of stuff to talk about. So that's the plan for today. New Phyrexia stuff, or I guess Phyrexia All Will Be One, not new Phyrexia, and then also maybe get into some fish mail at the end. But before we get into all that, a reminder that today's show is brought to you by Card Conduit. And Card Conduit, they're the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. If you're tired of all the hassles that go into buy listing your cards, well, Card Conduit lets you skip all the time and the typing and the work. With their curated service, you can send in as many cards as you want, as long as they get a buy list value of $1 or more, and you pay just a 5% service fee. And if you want to do a little bit of work, you can use their sorted service, where you list and sort your cards in advance and pay just a 2% fee. And no matter which option you choose, you're going to get a detailed report with the results and a fast payment once the order is processed. And right now, you can even get another 10% off if you head over to cardconduit.com/mtggoldfish. Card Conduit, they're the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. So thank you to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And let's talk some Phyrexia All Will Be One. Pretty much not the whole set, but a huge chunk of the set has came out since last week. So we have a pretty huge list of cards that we wanted to talk about, which means I'm going to bump it over to Richard. And Richard, guide us through some spoilers.
All right. If you want to see all the cards in person on your screen, mtgpreviews.com, we put them all up there. And we're just going to jump straight into it because we have a ton of cards to talk about. And I think the one that everyone's talking about is Atraxa Grand Unifier. 3 green, white, blue, black. So 7 mana value. 7/7 legendary creature, Phyrexian Angel at Mythic. I'm going to get the magnifying glass here 1 second, guys. Flying Vigilance, Death Touch, Lifelink. Okay. When Atraxa enters the battlefield, reveal the top 10 cards of your library. For each card type, you may put a card of that type from among the revealed card types into your hand. Put the rest of the bottom in your library in a random order. Now, what's got people all riled up here is the helper text that says artifact, battle, creature, enchantment, instant, land, planeswalker, and sorcery are card types. So battle is a new card type. Tribal is not listed here, although it is here. They just decided to remove it for fun. What is battle and what is Atraxa? And is Atraxa better? What do you guys think?
Oh my goodness. So first, Atraxa, this is an easy one. I kind of hate this card. This is the kind of generic good stuff commander that I really like. I don't know. I just don't like it. It's just like, oh, play cards and I'm going to draw you a ton of cards. So I think the card itself is kind of boring. The battle thing, though, super intriguing. I love the callback to Tarmogoyf and Planeswalkers being revealed, this is how we first learned about Planeswalkers 15 years ago, was the word Planeswalker showing up in Tarmogoyf's reminder text. So I think that's really cute that they did it that way. As far as what battle is, I don't know. It could be, it probably involves combat in some way, right? Just based on the name, it seems to be a real card, not like a contraption or an attraction, something that's in a deck outside the game because Atraxa is getting it from your deck or has the ability to. Beyond that, a combat card that goes in your deck, I don't know. Krim, what do you think? Like, what could battle possibly be?
Okay, so I kind of thought about this and I think battle might be something along the lines like either plane chasey, or maybe it's something like where it just adds something on the board where a first player to reach this reward gets, XYZ. So like I don't know, first player to 10 power on board. It would kind of sit there like an enchantment or an artifact, but it'd just be a new type.
I wonder though, so let's say it was that. would you put that in your deck? Because you're the one that's got to like draw it and spend mana on it. Like, if it equally could benefit your opponent, I think that's the challenge for me in figuring this out. Like, it sounds like a cool mechanic if it like started in play like Monarch, but I wouldn't put a battle in my deck if my opponent can potentially get the reward from it, I don't think.
I think what it would be since you're going to be taking the turn and like the mana and the card slot to put it in, it'd be something along like, if I hit this like goal first, I get this exponentially great reward. If the opponent hits it, it just makes it so that it stems the bleeding and they don't take as much. So imagine like, let's just say in this case, I hit it first. You target opponent gets Cruel Ultimatum. They hit it first. They only get Dark Intimation instead.
Okay. Or maybe like if your opponent wins a battle, they just like nothing happens, and if you win the battle, then you get some powerful effect. Okay, I can see that. What about you, Richard? Could it be? Here's my question. You play Snap a lot. Could it be Snap? You know how the lanes have like, here's this thing, you can't play cards here. Your abilities are doubled. Like, could there be some sort of plane chase overlay that you like
space?
Just
Jace Bellerin divide into planes, like we're formalizing that. No, I think what Krim described was like an enchantment, though, right? Like it has to be something. Like I don't think it'd just be like an emblem or something like that, right? I think it has to. I don't know what it would be. Like maybe something that cheats mana or something. Like something you can cast that's like different than a spell. Because if it's just like an instant or sorcery or an enchantment, like they would just name it that, right? So if it's a new card type, I think it actually has to do something like different mechanically. So like I don't know, like maybe your battles or MDFCs. No, I feel like the resource system is what needs to be fixed in Magic. So either like it lets you cheat mana or fix your mana or do something like that, but it's also battle, so it has to be combat related.
And the name sounds combat-y, yeah, just based on the name of it.
I don't know. Okay, are we guaranteed to have battle in this set?
We are guaranteed not. Well, I don't know if we're guaranteed not to, but it seems like it is not coming in this set. But this is the big change
this is just
that's coming
ambiguous
next
for
set.
setting up for the next set.
For March of the Machines.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we're not even going to get it this
To
set?
me,
Not
I
a
hope it's
single
modern
one?
playable and in green or black so that my Tarmogoyf gets a +1 buff.
Great.
I also think this probably explains that weird Aftermath set where we're like, what's going on with like 5-card packs? Why is this set only like 50 cards or something? I would not be surprised if the Aftermath set was literally just like battles, like a 50-card set of battles to get a bunch of this new card type into the game. So I think that maybe that is where they're going with the March of the Machines Aftermath. I got to ask you guys, so we don't know what this is. Does seeing a new card type entering the game, does that excite you or scare you? Because I've kind of bounced back and forth. Like, at first I'm like, whoa, new thing, that's super cool. And then I'm like, oh my God, every time they do a new thing, it tends to be really broken. Look at companions and equipment and vehicles. And the long list of like trying to balance something brand new is just so hard. So are you more hyped about something new or scared that something will be broken?
I'm excited, but this is how we got Planeswalkers, which is like now one of my favorite types, or it is my favorite type of thing in Magic, right? I really liked Planeswalkers, and yeah, like I the only thing here is I hope that if it is something busted, they're quick to like correct it however they can. It's cool, we'll have a brand new type of thing on here, but if it just starts ruining the game for like after 3 months or whatever, and before someone says Planeswalkers did not ruin the game, I think that like as long as they're willing to correct it like along the lines like how Companion got corrected just a little bit faster, at least for Standards life, I think that would be pretty important.
What about you, Richard?
We have to see what it is. If it's like tribal, who cares?
Yeah.
Right? If it's like Planeswalker, then okay, you have meaningfully changed the game. And hopefully it's interesting and not just this weird money grab. If it's like, companions, this is like horrendous, right? So we gotta see what it is. I hope it's more like tribal. I hope it's like a throwaway mechanic, like just for this one set or something, and then yes, it will affect like eternal formats in the future, but like they're not going to keep printing battle like every set forever, right? Like this is just a one-time thing. And if it's Planeswalker, like, I hope it's actually good. Like, Planeswalkers, I think, change the way the game is played. So it's not just like this thing that you can be, oh, it could be an enchantment or something, right? And they just decided to make it a new type. Like, it actually needs to be its own type. So I hope if it's something like that, it's actually like well thought out and not, just kind of, you could have called it an enchantment, called it a day, but you just decide to call it battle to sell more packs, right? Like, so I don't know.
But
You have to see what it looks like.
I'm kind of sad now to see that this type is here and it didn't come in the Brothers' War. Or you know what I mean? Because then there are these cards that'd be like, oh, the great a great battle of Urza and Mishra. Like that could be a reference to like you know what I mean, like something like that.
That's true. Although like so many Magic sets have some sort of battle theme going on that you could probably say that about like almost every set. Like, oh, there could have been a really sweet battle in whatever set, Zendikar or Ravnica or something.
I don't know about those sets.
Seth's snap thing is correct though. Like, so in Magic, you always have one battlefield and everything fights. Like, wouldn't it be cool if you had like 2 different locations to fight at? So like battles.
Isn't this artifact
splits.
Now?
Essentially,
are we becoming artifacts?
Different lanes. So that like, oh, Tarmogoyf is so scary, and let me deploy my threats on the other lane.
Right.
That'd be actually kind of interesting. I don't know how that would work, right? But like, I think having multiple battles, like, can you imagine Lord of the Rings? You have multiple battlefronts.
Oh man!
Like,
can you imagine reading these cards? This card gets first strike in Battlefield Lane 1. And I mean,
you know that the Lord of the Rings that's part of it. Like, there is a reason this is launching now, and it's going to be a big focus of Lord of the Rings. It's gotta be. It just makes too much sense. I would worry about the complexity. I saw I've been keeping track of people's like predictions and guesses, and there was one Reddit one that someone thought it was going to be kind of like Snap or like Space Bellerin, where it splits the battlefield into 3 zones and you got to win a zone. And then the reward was like, if you win the zone, you like got a shock. I think it was like 2 damage to something. And I was like, there's no way I want to deal with just the complexity of like 3 zones for such a small reward. So I hope if they do something like that, it has like a meaningful impact.
The more we talk about it, like, this would open so much design space if you could split battles, because now you can add cards to move between battles. You could buff battlefields. You could add effects on, like, basically you could just copy Snap, and it's so much you can add to it. Like, it's not just like printing 5 cards, right? You can print thousands and thousands of cards with this new mechanic in mind. So,
dude, there's no
I want to replace all cards in all of my existing decks? I don't know about this one, right?
that come on now. That's going to be a lot of text, right? Like oh my god.
That's why it's its own card type, because all that text is in the rule book.
Yeah.
And the card just says battle. It's like, instants have a lot of text, except it's all in the rule book, right? The stack and everything, it's all in the rule book, and it just says instant on the card, right?
So like lane 1 would be sorcery spells only can be casted here.
No, Kurt.
Like that.
It's 2023. You roll a die at the beginning of each upkeep to decide.
Oh, that's true. That's true. That's true.
I mean, okay, so I think we also buried the most important question about this. Does battle mean Tarmogoyf is good now, Richard? Was Tarmogoyf's problem that it just could not quite get big enough? Could this extra +1/+1 put it over the top again? Is it back?
You jest, but like Tarmogoyf nowadays is like a 5 or 6 power threat, right? Like before it was always a solid 4, unless someone played tribal. But now with like hammer time and like all this crap, it's like always like a 6, 7. Like if it's like an 8 or 9 power. If it gets bigger than Murktide, okay? If it gets bigger than Murktide, it's still worse because it doesn't fly. But at least you can like attack through a Murktide.
Okay,
there are not enough types for this to be swinging through a Murktide. Have you ever seen anyone block with a Murktide either? Like it's like usually you just die.
But you don't get stonewalled by the 1 drop of Death's Shadow, okay? Like we can talk, right? So we just need a little more card type creep, and we can get there.
Okay, so things are looking up for the Goyf.
Card type creep. This is all to go towards what is this called? The Goyf Gate. That's what we call it, right?
I'm sure there's like one person at Wizards trying to make Goyf like work again. They're like, come on,
Yeah.
you gotta, we gotta get this to work. Like every set, they try to like ninja in something to buff Tarmogoyf. Like, what if it's a 1-mana planeswalker that sacrifices itself?
Anyway, I'm curious what y'all think about Battle. This has been a huge conversation. Let us know in the comments. What's your guess? Because it seems like this could be a pretty big thing and have a huge impact on the game. And we got a couple months until we get to March of the Machines and actually learn what this is about. So if you got guesses, let us know what you think about Battle in the comments. But we better move on because we have so many spoiler cards to talk about.
All right, next up. Sword of Forge and Frontier. Another Sword of F and F, just to confuse everyone. 3 generic mana, artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+2, and it has pro red and green. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play these cards this turn. You may play an additional land this turn. Equip 2.
This card is so much better than I expected it to be. When I thought they'd bring swords back, but after seeing how powered down some of the Modern Horizons ones were, especially for 60 card formats, I was expecting it to be like a Sword of Body and Mind dud type sword. But this sword's actually like good. Like it seems good. It draws you 2 cards. It ramps you. Definitely seems to be made with Commander in mind. I think there's an argument that this immediately becomes the #1 sword in Commander. I think Sword of Hearth and Home is the most played now. I think this is probably better. Like you get the ramp and you get the card draw. So I don't know. I think this sword's like surprisingly good.
I think this sword is it's solid. I think it's better than a few of the others. But like in this standard, I think the colors actually are pretty good, right? Pro red, pro green. You get to like, get through. Pro red, meaning like you can kind of like, you could survive the strangles and all that stuff, and you can get through some of the bigger creatures in green and whatnot. I think the colors are probably better than the abilities in this standard. But I do think that the abilities aren't the worst thing. An impulse kind of like draws pretty cool. The extra land, it's like, sure, why not? Green does that.
I think so. This is like unplayable in all 60 card formats, right?
Is
like,
it?
Is it?
Would you ever like play this as just a value sword? Like,
Okay,
cast it for 3 mana, equip it for 2. Even in standard, like you don't need the extra land drop. It doesn't help you.
Imagine that this says when it hits your opponent, Growth Spiral. Would that be a good sword? Because I think that's actually what this is. It's like a growth spiral.
Because it costs
or a
5
mini
mana
Escape to the Wilds.
like, get online, right?
I mean, I think there is a legit question. My question is, are swords playable anymore, period, in 60 card formats? Or in 2023 is 3 to cast, 2 to equip. Is that just, no matter what the text is that just not playable anymore? Is it too slow? But I think that I like the abilities on it. Like, I think drawing and ramping, those are the 2 best things in Magic, essentially.
But so if you want to play and smack someone, it's 5 mana, right? So
Yeah,
for 5
the
mana,
first time.
you can draw cards like to your heart's desire, like much more efficiently. And then usually in 60 card formats, once you have 5 mana, you don't need more. So playing the additional land doesn't help. So I don't think you play this like normally. Would you Stoneforge this in? I don't know about that either, right? Like, so
Probably not.
Well,
if Stoneforge was in standard,
ever
I
play
would.
any real swords anymore? Like, what do we even play?
Very rarely I see
guess
Fire
Feast and
and Ice.
Famine, Fire and Ice. Yeah, I don't see why you would play this in 60 card formats, and usually for the color protection. But red and green is typically not the color you need protection for from like the more powerful formats. So,
But swords have always been playable, though, right? Like OG
until
Mirrodin
Modern
swords
Horizons 2
are
came
playable.
out.
For new Phyrexia swords are playable. I was thinking more standard. Like, I don't think I'd play this in modern, but in standard, I don't know. In an equipment deck,
Did we ever play swords in standard? Is it like War
I mean,
and
they were
Peace was
super.
played?
They were
Or
super
War and
good.
Peace was good.
Yeah,
And Feast and Famine.
Feast and Famine got played.
Feast and
Although-
Famine because that's broken.
Although we
Yes.
also
And then it was
had like Stoneforge in that standard, which probably
Right,
definitely
right.
went a long way towards making that happen. But
Yeah, I mean, that is true. Like, again, would we just play swords? And when you ask that question, I don't know. That might be kind of too slow, unless there's some kind of artifact deck, right? Like swords kind of just don't do anything in standard, and I mean, I guess in commander that's fine, but like in standard, I don't think they do enough.
Yeah,
and I
You
think
could play a planeswalker that does just as much. You could play Invoke Despair, which like basically draws all your cards right now. Like
I don't know.
You need
like,
to hit like several times for the sword to generate value, right? And usually you can't get that done.
Like, honestly, if you put Sword of Fire and Ice, which I think most people agree is just the best constructed sword into standard, it would have the same issue. Like, I would still be like, well, it's a lot to cast and a lot to equip in 2023. So is this even worth it? So what about Commander, though? Is this the best Commander sword a hot take? Or is that just like
that's
obvious?
a hot take. I think Feast and Famine is actually the strongest sword.
Okay.
Like, doubling your mana, I think, trumps everything.
Okay.
And then I guess afterwards you have
Body and Mind.
get out of here, Chris.
Hearth and Home probably.
I'm not pushing any
Fire and
anything.
Ice. So Fire and Ice, Hearth and Home, and Forge and Frontier, right?
Body
would
and Mind.
be your contenders for the next one.
So you think it's tier 2, like second tier? Number one is
It's
Feast and
second
Famine,
tier.
and this is in the next group in your take, yeah.
Fire and Ice is.
But this
So
ramps,
this
and
ramps,
draws,
right? So
Ramps
this
and
ramps, so
draws,
this makes
the
it
two
very
best things
strong.
in Commander: ramp and draw.
But
I don't
ramp-
know if
but
I.
There's actual ramp and blink. This is like maybe you ramp, right? And then look at 2.
That's true.
So
you
I think
could
it's
whiff.
close.
I think
It's
this
close.
is definitely after Hearth and Home.
And I mean, well, you can also play the extra land from your hand too. Like in the perfect world, you like hit a land in a spell, you play the land, you cast the spell, you get all the value. But you can make the extra land drop from your hand if you need to. What do you think, Grim? Behind Hearth and Home?
Yeah, like I would rank this behind Hearth and Home. I don't
think
know.
it's
I mean,
ahead. I think it's it draws cards and makes mana. It's exactly what Commander wants.
it's cool. Like I think it's good. It's better than obviously like War and Peace. I don't. I think it's. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not better than Fire and Ice. Definitely not better
like
than
Fire and
Feast
Ice
and
better?
Famine. Yeah, I like Fire and Ice way more.
Actually,
I mean,
yeah.
the color protection is another thing you have to factor into this, right? Like the fire and ice protection of blue and red is really nice as opposed to green and red.
I mean, I think I like that green is maybe the best color for attacking through blockers. There's a lot of green creatures in Commanders, so that part's relevant. But as far as like preventing removal, green is not the most helpful color.
Like, yeah, you're stopping maybe Beast Within, and like that's about it, right? So
And then they can always
I don't
beast
know.
within the sword if they really
Right,
want
yeah.
to.
yeah, the creature has pro that color, but your sword doesn't. So I don't know. I mean, I think that if you think about it, break it down, Fire and Ice is better, Feast and Famine's better. I'm not joking. I do like Body and Mind more.
And Grim's opinion no longer matters.
Podcast
to me.
over. Okay.
The black and red one is the
Horrible.
black and red one's better.
Bad.
I think the black
Wait,
and red
what?
one's better.
Whoa.
Grim
Yeah,
is
just
the
put this at
worst.
the
Hold on.
bottom. You just put everything better than this.
Wow.
Hold on, I it's better than Light and Shadow. No, yeah, it's better than Light and Shadow. No,
Crim.
no,
No,
it's not.
Light and Shadows one. Oh my goodness. Well,
It might
we
actually
gotta
be the
remember,
worst sword.
Crim doesn't really play creatures or equipment decks. So.
What? I literally have a Voltron deck.
I was trying to give you a pass for your horrible sword opinions, but
Yo, you leave that alone. All right, my Voltron deck does actually play these swords. I mean, Black Red Sword blows up artifacts. That's actually very relevant in Commander, right? Like, that is extremely relevant.
but this will
And
draw
sure,
you
Planeswalkers.
your artifact
Yes.
destruction and give you the
Maybe.
lands to cast it.
I mean, there's a lot of maybes here, right? Like, sure, if I
That's
have
true.
another land, right? If I have another land or I hit
Yeah.
that, then okay.
Maybe that's it. Crim never has extra lands, so maybe this sword is just bad for him.
I mean, you should really like the sword because it's another way to do real ramping in Grixis colors.
That's true.
Right? Like,
I mean-
like non-green or white-based ramp is very hard to find. So, like, Sword of the Animist, Sword of Hearth and Home, and Sword of Forge and Frontier should be basically in every Grixis deck that has like a creature to equip with, right? And of course, you can equip because you're also running Burnish Heart and Solemn as your other like Grixis ramp options. So regardless of how you rank the swords, I think just every Grixis deck or Grixis colored decks will play this sword. In addition to whatever other swords I think are better. But this card will be very hotly sought after just for that reason. Like ramping in non white and green colors.
And it doesn't get got by opposition agent, which is something we've seen recently with like Hearth and Home or Sword of the Animist. Like that has actually been a drawback in some of our Commander Clash games. So.
All right.
Okay.
Next up.
Okay, hold on. One more thing. It's better than
the worst sword.
It's better than Sword of Truth and Justice.
What does Truth and Justice even do? Proliferate and
it's proliferate, and then you get a 1/1 or sorry other order. You get a 1/1 counter, and then you proliferate.
Oh yeah, that one's
so
pretty bad.
Okay,
yeah,
so bad.
And then obviously War and Peace. So
Okay.
it's not the worst sword.
Wow, you're ranking a lot lower than I do.
I think this
I'm with
sweet.
Seth. This is like in the second tier. So this is either the second, third, or fourth best sword. I think Feast and Famine is the best, like without question.
I mean, I think Feast and Famine is easily the best one, right? Like by a landslide. And then it's like, you know,
what Seth, you don't believe? Like, why ramp a land when you can just double your mana?
It's right there. Yeah.
But you need lands for the mana doubling to actually matter. I don't know. It's close. It's definitely for me in the top tier. We can argue about which one is actually number one, but I think it's very good in Commander.
All right. Next up, Tyrranax Rex. 4 green, 7 mana value. Phyrexian dinosaur. 8/8. This spell can't be countered. Trample, ward 4, haste, toxic 4.
So Krim, how do you feel about this card?
So hear me out. A lot of people have asked me about this card and how I feel about this card. I'm going to put it on the record here. I think Carnage Tyrant might have been worse.
Ooh, really?
Wait, worse as in better?
As in
Like,
better. Yes, as in better
worse
in
for
the
you.
meta. Better in the meta that it was in. Right? Because in the meta that this is going to come into, Ward 4, I am now going to never leave my house with any less than 4 Void Rens.
Yeah.
Can't be countered. Control decks don't exist anyways. So I like why do I care if it can't be countered? This card is truly good as Toxic will allow it to be good. It's a haste body and it's got Toxic 4. This is either going to be the coolest thing or the worst thing in your deck, right? Because it's going to be like 7 mana. So it's 7 mana and it could either be the closing touches that you need, but then I ask myself, why wouldn't I just use something else that is toxic and cheaper? So I don't know. Like this seems like it'd be really cool. It's like a Phyrexian dinosaur, but and it'll probably win some games here and there in a good amount of games. But like control doesn't exist. Not like the control that we know or the one that I love. So like there's gonna be a lot of edicts running around. One that like some really busted removal spells. That this is not as powerful as Carnage Tyrant was in its meta.
I mean, it is kind of true that I guess full-on Crim control doesn't really exist, but my stuff gets Make Disappeared and Disdainful Stroked pretty regularly. Like every deck is playing those cards, or many decks are playing those cards. So even though you might not be fighting like Teferi control in specific or whatever, I think being uncounterable and still offers a lot of value. And honestly, I always look at the most played cards in the format. I'm pretty sure you're the only person who plays Void Rend. I never see that show up in anyone's list, but every time we talk, but maybe people will start playing it to answer this. But discounting Void Rend, Ward 4 is a big number. Like you got to spend 6 to go for the Throat It. You got to spend 8 to Wandering Emperor it. It's probably getting in a hit and then making your opponent skip their next turn unless they have Void Rend.
But like now let's factor in the removal that is here. And like, yeah, Make Disappear, it does exist, right? Like I'm not saying counter spells don't get played. Stroke happens as well. Usually the Grixis mid-range decks, right? Mm-hmm. But Make Disappear is probably going to be trying to stop all your early stuff, right? So like,
yeah,
I if they've still got counter magic at the end of the game here, like your poisonous deck is probably struggling, right? like the poisonous deck. Okay, let me ask you this. Would you play this outside of a poisonous deck?
I was actually going to say that I think Toxic is kind of a trap on this card. And it's actually just like a good card Even if you don't toxic.
All right. I got
8/8 trample haste ward? Like, that's
I'm
a
talking
lot of
about
damage.
this card because I don't understand why everyone's so hype about it. It's like, I'm on the Crim vote here. Can't be countered is not a real clause on this because we don't play draw go control. Like, who's playing their 7 drops for real and running into make disappear? It's not very common, right? You're cheating them into play. You're doing other stuff. So, like, 7 mana, 8 damage. Like, just assume it can't be removed, right? It's just coming in and smacking you. Like, is that worth 7 mana? I don't think so, right? I think you need that Toxic 4 to be relevant. Like, decks will just take the 8 damage and kill you. Like, they don't need to remove it, right? They'll just hit you back, right? They can play bigger things at 7 mana. So, I think this is like a fringe counter for when Crim revives draw go control. Then everyone's like, oh yes, but Tyrranax Rex will stop Crim, right? But I don't think you play this in current standard. And when you just play Titan of Industry, like,
Titan of Industry is way better. Way better.
It's good. Like, Titan Industry. That, I
you
guess
really
that is
need
the
that
question.
toxic synergy, right? But then this is like a 7 drop to finish off the toxic. And most of the toxic, so toxic, if you haven't read the other cards, is basically they have a bunch of cards that say if your opponent has like 3 or 4 more toxic counters, it does something. So, like, you're not even trying to kill people with Infect, right? You're just trying to get some value toxic, right? And that's like a 7 drop trying to get value toxic as well, right? So,
I mean, the fact that Nissa in Titan of Industry exists is fair. Like, there are some very powerful green 7 drops, so maybe those just push us out of the format, but I don't know.
This is gonna come in like this is gonna come in like how like people used to bring in Gaia's Revenge against like Control or something like that. Like it's like okay, cool. You got me with Gaia's Revenge, but like that card is like terrible everywhere else, right? And on top of that, I'm serious here. I think the removal is good enough this standard format to where like Carnage Tyrant in its time was like I needed a sweep or I had an Eldest Reborn and you just didn't have anything else on board, right? So this card, though, it is very likely that this format is more well equipped to deal with something like a Carnage Tyrant-esque effect, right? Between Sheoldred's whatever partying edict, which has me wanting to go on a different rant, but that card and legitimately if Esper midrange is still popular or Esper control Void Rend is the truth, there's lots of removal that does legitimately interact with this card way easier.
I mean, yeah, hexproof is not Ward 4 is not hexproof. That is true. There are ways around it. Although I think like making it sound like it's easy to deal with is like a little too far for me. Like
it's not easy, but you just take your 8 burger twice while you kill them with like your Rafine in the air, right? Like,
well, I mean, I imagine that you're playing some deck that deals damage earlier in the game. I don't think you just like do nothing and then try to get them with just this. But if you're playing some sort of like Uvenwald Oddity and like these good efficient like smash you green threats, I can imagine like just coming down and being like
just using it as a hasty
come in just
smack
like smack you for the last 8 and hopefully that's the last of your life.
But how do you
Yeah, I guess we'll see. I mean, Titan Industry scares me because that card is really good. So maybe the Titan Industry is just better.
I feel like you need to reanimate this thing. And would you really waste your reanimation efforts on a Tyrranax Rex, right?
I would feel pretty bad if I reanimated this. Like,
I would rather reanimate Titan of Industry, given the choice. Unless I was actually a toxic deck. If my goal is to poison you out, then maybe it would be different, but...
All right. Speaking of other green drops that Crim likes at 7 mana, Nissa Ascended Animus. 3 green, Phyrexian green. So 7 mana value, 2 of which are Phyrexian. Completed. 7 starting loyalty, +1. Create an XX Phyrexian horror creature, where X is Nissa Ascended Animus loyalty. -1, destroy target artifact or enchantment. -7, until end of turn, creatures you control get +1/+1 for each force you control and gain trample.
This card is cracked. This card is absolutely cracked. This is, of course, Nissa's gonna bother me again. Are you serious? I thought I had a good standard life when whatever the Golgari. Can you just keep making that one? Like, just reprint the Golgari Nissa, but completed. Like, this one is busted. I think this card is so good. I think the +1 obviously is nice. The -1, sure. It's actually kind of pretty darn relevant when there's wedding announcements, bank busters, so many, and like, sagas running around left and right.
Yeah.
Fable, yeah, like, and then just, it's great. You land it on 5, still a very solid 5-drop Planeswalker. You land it on 7, you're probably ulting, and you're definitely going to, I don't know. This card can come down and immediately overrun. And that is really good. I think this card is absurdly good.
I mean,
if
I
you
think
play
this
it for
card's really
5. Nissa is a 3 loyalty. You poop out a 4/4 token.
Wait,
Yep,
hold
right?
on. If you play it for 5, completed can be paid.
So
for
for each
3,
completed, you get 2 loyalty lower. So you go,
Right.
you start at -4. So it starts at 3 loyalty. You +1, it's 4 loyalty. You poop out a 4/4 horror.
Yeah.
And then if you play it for 7, you're pooping out an 8, power toughness creature. And then
Sure.
You can also overrun immediately at 7. But if you play at 5, you need a plus for a million years before you can overrun.
I mean, but you're just literally pooping out these
Yeah.
Phyrexian horrors that are just very good.
I think it's kind of
But if for some reason they have a flyer, right, that they kill Nissa, or they just use maybe an edict or something and remove Nissa, all of your horrors are dead, right? Because Nissa has no loyalty anymore.
Does it? Okay, so is that
true
so-
or no?
Oh.
Or does it stick?
I thought
Is it the
just-
time you plussed it?
Yeah, I thought it was at the time you plussed it, because
Yeah,
if
my
not,
assumption is they stick too. That's how
So they
I
stick?
read it. So I
Yeah.
think the tokens stick, although I'm not a judge.
Okay, so then if
If-
you actually play Nissa, then you would have a 4/4, a 5/5, a 6/6, a 7/7, or something like that, right? They don't all
Mhm.
become the maximum. Okay.
because
I mean-
if the +1 worked the way that you just described it, this card is really bad.
Yeah, that would make it
Like-
really
like-
bad.
That'd be really
I think
bad.
it would be stars or something. I think it would be star or something if it was
Right.
changing. I think
Yeah.
I think you're right that it would just stick. Okay.
I mean, this makes the biggest tokens with a plus out of any planeswalker. Even if you're starting at 5, which I think is by far its weakest mode, 5 mana 3 loyalty, kind of meh. But plussing to make 4/4s or 8/8s is ridiculous. And then the ultimate just ends the game right away. It doesn't seem that hard for this to just come down and just overrun and close out the game immediately. Plus, like Krim said, even in standard, there's a lot of value with that -1. To me, this Planeswalker seems really strong. It is 7 mana. I know the completed aspect comes into it, but it is an expensive Planeswalker. I don't think I'd want to play 5. To me is desperation mode. You played at 5
Is
because
it?
you're oh no, I just have
Why?
to do
it's
something.
5 mana, you poop out a 4/4. That's not
Yeah,
bad.
you just start 5 mana Nissa before World Waker made a 4/4, right? And then now you just go turn after that, it becomes a 5/5, right? So
But 3 loyalty is not much for a 5 mana Planeswalker.
But you
It
have a
seems-
huge chump blocker, right?
Yeah.
Even if it may not even be a chump blocker, it may just be a brick wall, right? Or you have a chump blocker, the next turn you're doing a 5/5.
yeah, you're just
okay.
getting value over
But you have
time.
that
I don't know, I think it's
flexibility,
pretty
right?
good.
If this doesn't impact the board, then you hold it for 7 mana but I don't think you would do that, right? If you were ahead, you would play this on 5. If you were behind, I don't think you have time to wait for 7 mana to play this. But
I mean, I think we're also, if you're behind, you also have to take into consideration that 4 life is a lot. If you're already behind, can you afford to take 4? That's 20% of your life total. I think one thing I've noticed with completed Planeswalkers is I kind of treat the Phyrexian mana symbols like they're literally free. Just I get to play this for less loyalty. That's awesome. But the life does matter, especially when there's 2 of them in there. That's a big chunk.
nonsense, Seth.
I don't know what you're talking about, Seth. I've never
This was a 5-drop, and you start at 16 life. Okay, that's how Magic works.
Is this a commander staple? Do you play this in essentially every green deck for the ability to? I mean, all of its modes are good. Big creatures, blowing up artifacts and enchantments, very relevant, and then the option to just Crater Hoof essentially and win the game if you have 7 mana and cast this.
I think it is really good, right? I mean, just for those exact reasons. It poops out big bodies, it blows up enchantments and artifacts, which is all over Commander. And it's not hard to get to 7 mana in Commander to just immediately overrun. So I think that and one of its strong suits can also be its weak point in that it is not a creature, which could be also a weak point, right? But it is nice to know that you have an overrun attached to something that isn't a creature. So
I mean,
maybe-
it's not overrun. You need forest.
Or you need forest, right?
Right. So you actually need to play a forest based deck, and then it's 7 mana overrun, which is not.
It
the
is
greatest.
7 mana.
It's like more Crater Hoof.
Hoofian,
Like just
yeah.
play Crater
Yeah.
Hoof and call it a day. So I don't know that it's auto include like you guys are saying. Like it'll be strong in certain decks, but
I don't
like,
think it's auto
making
include, but I think it's good.
making a 4/4 or 7/7 like a single one in Commander is not good enough, right?
It is a planeswalker.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got the same
Like-
issue that it'll die, but that the last mode gets around that. Like, I think that's why I think of it as a good commander planeswalker. Just you can play it like a sorcery. You can play it like, here's my 7 mana, win the game. Crater Hoof effect.
But just play Crater Hoof.
Yeah, but
But redundancy.
Crater Hoof's 8, right?
It's called Green
And-
Sun Zenith.
That is true. I mean, in green decks, you're
Yeah.
able to tutor up creatures more easily. Although there's also Yavimaya, so I think the forest thing doesn't intimidate me too much in a green deck. I think you can.
Well, I mean, we have
find your
triumphs now,
Yavimaya,
so
or you
even
have triumphs
5-color
and
decks can
shocks
be
and-
pure forest if you really want,
Yeah.
right? All right. So that was big and splashy. Next card, Phyrexian Vindicator. White, white. So 4 white mana. 5/5 Phyrexian Horror flying. If damage would be dealt to Phyrexian Vindicator, prevent that damage. When damage is prevented this way, Phyrexian Vindicator deals that much damage to any target. Is this the black obliterator?
The
I
white
mean,
obliterator.
It really
Or
is
sorry,
the
the
white
white-
It
obliterator.
literally is, yeah, the white obliterator.
And hilariously, I
No,
think
no.
I think it's essentially the same as far as how it plays out. Like, it still dies to all the removal. If it sits out on the battlefield, you can't deal with it with combat, really. It's going to wreck red decks. Poor red aggro decks are just absolutely up a creek in this Phyrexia standard. It really is the abilities are very different, but as far as what it's going to do, I think it's very, very similar. Which makes me skeptical that
If
it's
you
going to
get
be good in
Obliterator to go
standard.
off, you win.
Yeah,
Right?
I don't think this
even
is...
if like 3 damage is dealt to Obliterator, you win. This thing is like I lightning bolt your face, like
But,
it's like
yeah.
it's not the same for the amount of effort you're putting in, and it has evasion for some reason. Like the ability is so bad. Like normally Obliterator has pseudo evasion, like no one's gonna block it because they're gonna die.
Yeah.
This one actually needs evasion.
I mean, the
Because
ability's
people might
not
actually
so
block it and just take the
bad.
damage.
There is
It's not-
one thing to it, though. It is that it is in a deck, a color that isn't like black, where they have an embarrassment of riches. Maybe
That's true.
white outside of the Wandering Emperor, like for a mono white or whatever mid range deck. This is like okay there, right?
I mean, I think
This
the
needs
card's
Flash. If this had Flash and they
Ooh.
like Tyrranax Rex you or whatever, and you
Ah.
Flash this in, right? Then you can trade 1 for 1. No, you can't. It has Void. Never mind. This is
I mean,
useless.
It's probably a synergy card, and I just don't know if we have the synergies in standard. In other formats, you like Blasphemous Axe, Star of Extinction, any Stuffy Dial, Boros Reckoner synergy is going to work with this, which is sweet. There's tons of like janky combos that you can pull off with that. I don't think we have that in standard, though. In 4 white mana symbols is a cost. Like, we have seen people casting Invoke Justice, so we know it's possible that you can do it. We've seen, people casting Invoke Despair as well in black decks, so I don't think it's a deal breaker, but I actually think this card's like medium in standard. It looks very flashy, but I'm not sure it's actually like a good standard card. It's more
Wait,
like,
what did you rate
Wait.
Obliterator for standard?
I think about the
Medium?
same. Yeah, like, I don't know if it's actually that good. Is it better than Shieldred? It still dies to hard removal, really good in some matchups.
What if I just play this as a 4 mana 5/5 flyer?
I mean,
Is
it's
that
got good
enough?
it's got good stats.
Well, you
Like,
see,
just
you
it.
see,
That's it.
Richard, that does exist, and I think there is something that has casually kind of slipped under the radar, but I think it's a cool card, and it's at the 4 slot in black, but it's that demon, the new Abyssal Persecutor.
Oh, the one. I think
Dude,
that
I think-
card's
What's it
bad.
called? Wait, what's the 4?
Archfiend of the
Archfiend
Dross.
Something.
Oh, wait, what's the
yeah.
downside of it?
You lose the
Well,
game
you
once
can
all
lose
the
the
oil
game.
counters are. Let's be honest, it'll never live that long, but you throw that in, the point is though, you can connect with this just once, then you're doing pretty good, right? It's
All right,
a
then-
big
then
body.
my 4 mana 5/5 flyer is unplayable.
Wait,
yeah, okay.
Do you think
This-
people
this-
actually play Archfiend? Is that a playable card?
So
Like,
Archfiend
outside
is a
of-
4 mana 6/6. It comes in flying. It comes in with 4 oil counters. Beginning of upkeep, remove an oil counter. If you have no oil counters, you lose the game. Whenever a creature and opponent dies, its controller loses 2 life.
It's Demonic
So you
Pact 5 and 6, and on top of that, it's legitimately a beater. I
This
think
would
it's
be so good with Meatball Massacre in the format.
Oh my God, yeah.
So much
You just play
draining.
this, and you hit him like once or twice, and then you meatball, and like the game is over. But
Like-
that's not a thing.
even let's say without that, I think this is a serious body, right? And
Yeah.
you could play this like if you wanted to, you could try to be cute and play in like a Solkanar deck, and then just like blink it so that you never run out of count or whatever. Like, there's this card. I think seems like a solid beater. I don't know. Is a 4-mana 6/6 flyer just not enough anymore? I guess not.
It gets
No, I
it gets
think it's a solid
boyfriended.
beater.
It gets
In a-
boyfriended.
It's
I
fine
mean,
though,
sure,
right?
but in this color where things die, like your opponent's also going to lose 2 more life on top of that.
I will say I'm excited to build it with a Fateful Handoff, the like standard harmless offering thing. I think like that
Oh,
in
yeah.
Soul Canar, you can actually build like a janky deck around. I don't know if it's playable just as a good card though. Is it? Would you run
I
this?
always
Like,
play 4-mana 6/6 flyers, like all of them, like Desecration Demon.
Oh.
Like,
Yep.
I think these are highly playable, and I think if you can't finish the game in 4 turns with this
then
thing,
you deserve
then
to lose.
You're dying anyway, and you can always just Doomblade it yourself. Like you can always remove it yourself, right? So it's not even like the end of the world.
Yeah, I don't know. I think
Doesn't
What do we
anything
have
right
to
away.
play above this? Like, are there better 4-drops? Like,
Oh,
I play this over
Shieldred.
Obliterator any day.
I mean,
Well, you got
Shieldred,
Shieldred.
sure, but like Shieldred,
Shieldred, this is more aggro than Shieldred.
like I that's what I'm saying. It seems like it isn't, and
Is
it's
it?
as simple as just getting
Isn't
removed.
it?
But it's a 6-power body.
It's
right?
a 6
Like,
power flyer, right?
Yeah, but
Shieldred can
Shieldred
get
drains for
blocked.
2 a turn too.
But this will cause your opponent to lose even more life if creatures die. Like, so yeah, maybe let's say I draw 1 card, I
Okay.
take 2, right? And then 4 from Shieldred. I play this, I take 6, and then like even just like a simple board wipe, like a perilous like Path of Peril might just end my day if I'm like a deck playing like you know what I mean? Like that is kind of wild, right? Like there's no way this card isn't sweet. Look at that. I think that we're undervaluing that last line of text.
I think there's actually, because there's a lot of dirtily small creatures in Standard that just randomly die. So you lose a lot of life. So I actually kind of like this card. I like it over the Obliterators, the white and the black one. Maybe
I'm not
you just
sold.
actually just play a full suite of Shieldreds and ignore this, but I think there's potential somewhere.
Is Shieldred good enough to where, like, 'cause, like, that's the one thing, right? Shieldred is powerful. No one's here to question that. Yeah. Card's decent, pretty solid. However, how many copies are you playing of Shieldred? Like, are you playing a full 4? Like,
Probably.
I
3
think
or 4, probably.
I think 2 to 3, right? Like 2 to 3. So that means you still have some other things. I mean, is this better than Sorin? Is the question, right? Like these are the cards that I'd probably be looking at because I know there's some amount
different
of
roles
Shieldreds.
though, right? I think like in a Rafine deck, would you play this? I think
Yeah.
think you
Oh,
want to
yeah.
be aggressive versus
Oh, yeah.
in like the slower controlling decks, you'd take Sorin and Shieldred every time. But if you want to be more aggressive, do you take this? And I think this with Rafine, and then you like snap off a Void Rend or 2, like they're dead in like 2 attacks, right? Like so.
Yeah. Like
I mean,
Esper
it could have a
mid-range,
role. Yeah,
Mardu
I don't
mid-range. Like these are all decks that I think could benefit from having this big body that could just close out the game.
know. Well, we'll see. Well, I'm still not fully sold. It is big. I'll give you that. It is a lot of flying power.
All right. Next up, Minor Misstep. A single blue instant and uncommon. Counter target spell with mana value 1 or less. So you can counter 0 mana spells, but you can't counter like the pitch spells. Like it's mana value.
So Mental Misstep, basically, a callback to Mental Misstep, which we know that was busted. That was banned across formats. Like that was the same card essentially, except it only hit 1 mana value and you could cast it for Phyrexian mana. Is this card good? So in Standard, it's not good. No one's going to play this in Standard. I'm more curious about...
Whoa. You can counter a Delver. All right?
Yeah,
You can counter me and like Tomer, I guess. We're still forced in Delver. Give me a minute. All right.
how good is this in Modern? That's my, or also Legacy, I guess. But how good do you think this card is in those formats? I've seen so many wide-ranging opinions from like absolute trash to like main deck it, it's going to be great. So it gets 1-drops, which there are many. Ragavans, Dragonrage Channelers, Path to Exile, Lightning Bolt, Thoughtseize. So many 1-drops. Also gets the free spells, Living End, Rhinos, Crashing Footfalls. Gets any of those that have no mana value. Is that enough to make it playable?
It bodies like almost like every
good against
creature
Hammer.
in Hammer time. Right?
Yeah, Hammer does get wrecked.
No, this is not good against Hammer.
What?
Really?
Dude, you can counter
You're gonna hold up one
Shadow
mana and
Spear?
hope to like counter something? Like,
I mean,
Yeah.
it gets Sigarda's Aid, Hammer, and many creatures.
but remember, you need
deck.
to have the mana open, and you need to put this in your deck, and a Spell Pierce does the same job. So what you're really thinking
Oh,
is like,
no,
Spell Pierce,
no.
Flusterstorm,
Yep.
right? Like these are your counter equivalents, or just play like removal. Like if you're trying to minor misstep a Ragavan, like you're probably doing it wrong, right? You can just like lightning bolt it or something, right? So I think this is more like, do you play Flusterstorm or minor misstep, or do you play Spell Pierce or minor misstep? Because remember, if they don't play a 1-drop, you just held up 1 mana for nothing, right? like you gotta like, unlike mental misstep where you just play it for free anytime you feel like it, you need to have the mana open, and you need to have the exact time that they're dropping their 1-drop, right? So,
but every creature they play is pretty much a 1-drop, except for like Pure Steel Paladin and Stoneforge.
I feel like I feel like this is a sideboard card. I
Oh,
think
it 100%
the play
is.
draw thing is like something that concerns me, because like if you're on the play, it's great because you can counter your opponent's 1-drop. But if you're on the draw, like you're already facing down the Ragavan or whatever. And the big upside compared to something like Spell Pierce is being able to hit a creature, right? Like, because like you said, Spell Pierce in a lot of contexts does the same thing. I guess it's also better in the late game where your opponent could pay for the Spell Pierce and resolve their Rhinos or whatever is a thing that could actually happen. But I think the fact that it hits the free spells is the selling point for me. Like one card that is good enough against like Ragavans and Hammers and so forth, also good against Rhinos and the Cascade decks, and does a lot of what Spell Pierce does against most of the popular spells, Bolt and Unholy Heats and so Thoughtseizes. That seems pretty decent.
but so Spell Pierce hits like 2-drops and 3-drops in Portal. Like, yes, Spell Pierce can be paid for, right? But it actually hits other
an expressive
things.
iteration, a Blood Moon or something like that. Yeah.
So who would play this? Like Murktide?
Yeah, like the same decks that would play. So right now, if you look at the most played cards in Modern, Spell Pierce is in 40% of decks and Flusterstorm is in 32. They're both in the top 10 of most played cards. So I assume it would be the same decks. Like, that's really the question. Is this a better option than Spell Pierce and Flusterstorm for your finite sideboard slots? That's the competition.
I think, yeah, like that's the problem, right? Like the matchups, these all serve a different purpose, right? Like I don't think this, like, I don't know. I mean, Flusterstorm doesn't hit creatures. This does.
And it also doesn't hit planeswalkers or enchantments. It's only instant and sorcery. So it is very
But
narrow.
like you
in
play
that sense.
Flusterstorm to hose Cascade. Like you're not playing it like some generic counterspell or something, right? Like you don't typically care about these other card types. You're just here to make sure you don't die to Cascade or whatever, right? Like,
yep. And this also does that for 1 mana. Like make sure he doesn't die to Cascade. Spell Pierce is probably the most flexible of the bunch.
I feel you just Spell Pierce, no? I feel Spell Pierce is still king of them all.
It might still be. I mean,
it's like too narrow, right? Like, yes, you could theoretically hit Ragavan, but like no one is really playing this to hit the Ragavan, right? You're really using it to not die to creativity or to Living End or something like that, right? Like,
yeah.
So, and you can pierce. I don't know. I feel you should play Spell Pierce. And like, would you play this because everyone else is playing? Like, I don't think you get the mental misstep war where like you have to play this to misstep their misstep. Like, no. You get into this problem either.
No, and not having Phyrexian mana kind of eliminates a lot of that.
I
too.
feel
like,
this. Okay, what if this said like if the mana spent to spend the spell to cast a spell was 1 or less? Would that
then
have
it
been
would
too
go
broken?
It would have went way up in value because then you get the Evoke Elementals, then you get Force of Will, Force of Negation. I don't know if it'd be too broken, but it would be.
I feel they
then
could've
I
went
think
there.
I think they could have went. I
went there
mean,
to rein in. You're like, haha, I just furied you. I'm like, nah, right? Like here's my answer. So
considering the power level, I think it would be fine. And then it might be a main deck card. I could see playing that as a main deck card, spell snare style or something. Play a couple in the main deck. Although, like, even if you're not trying to counter Ragavan, the upside of randomly countering it is nice. Like, if you're bringing it in for other reasons and you randomly snipe one, it's nice that it could happen.
But it's like living end.
But you could also just answer it,
right? Like if you're
right?
bringing
Like-
this in for living end, like what are you exactly sniping here, right?
Yeah, I
who
guess
plays
living
Living
end.
Who plays
Yeah, I
Living
guess
End?
that's
Like-
true. Living end still gets you.
It's like creativity. Does creativity play Ragavan? I don't even know anymore. But like usually the decks you're bringing this stuff in, like
Counter their bolt.
You wouldn't-
don't have
yeah.
the thing you need to be sniping, right? You're just sniping the thing you want to snipe.
Yeah, no, that's true. That'll be interesting. I
This
think
has
it's in
to
the
be
mix.
something.
It's in the mix.
This is something that needs to just snipe something off the stack, right? Like like so. Let's you scrap creatures because there's tons of ways to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right.
I'm excited to see how it shakes out.
Jace. Jace has been completed, everyone. Jace, the Perfected Mind, 2 in a blue, Phyrexian blue, 5 starting loyalty, +1 until your next turn. Up to 1 target creature gets -3, -0, -2. Target player mills 3 cards. Then if a graveyard has 20 or more cards in it, you draw 3 cards. Otherwise, you draw a card. -X. Target player mills 3 times X cards.
How
Is
does
this
this
the
make
finale
so
we all
bad?
expected for
Oh my
Jace?
God.
Yo, hold on, hold on,
Limper,
hold
jeez.
on.
Okay, is he dead? Have we like? Is
I
this
hope
this
so.
it for Jace?
Dude, first off, just because you get an oil change doesn't mean you're dead. I think that's what's going on here. Just all the super friends, the Gatewatch, they're all getting an oil change. And I'm telling you, this is how we get our favorite motor oil secret layer drop. Boom, right here. Every booster box comes with a free oil change. Right here. On top of that, I think this card is pretty bad. But
Okay,
but God, do I love it. It's so bad. How does this card not have the passive? Like, I think this card, in order for it to have been better, it should have had Bruvok's ability as a passive. It's Jace. It's your Mickey Mouse. It's your Pikachu. Dude, he can't just get an oil change and continue to get worse. My man's been on a slide ever since he lost his shirt as a castaway. Whatever. Like, literally, Jace lost his shirt and he just declined every version of him has declined. And
maybe it's a
I
good
don't
thing he's
know.
completed. Yeah,
Dude,
it's not good.
To be honest with you, I think like, okay, they could have literally reprinted Jace the Mind Sculptor in Standard. That's my hot take. I think Jace the Mind Sculptor is A-okay in the Standard.
Yeah, I don't think it's even good.
Yeah, like it would be good, but like
There's
how does this so
oh,
bad?
you do have matches.
So
How is this so bad?
Is this Jace even good in a mill deck? It's obviously not good
Yes.
in a generic deck. Like, in a generic deck, this card doesn't do anything because all it cares about is milling. Is it strong enough if you're playing a mill deck? Is it strong enough to put in your deck?
60 card or 100 card?
60 card, yeah. 60 card.
I would play this in Historic for sure. We
Okay.
have the boba, the what's the
Burvac
sphere?
or
Mesmeric
whatever.
orb.
Oh,
Mesmeric
yeah.
orb. Right? We don't like Bruvak at this point now has proven to be just a win more and not enough, right? Because like it sits there, it dies. You know, like everybody's been waiting to kill something because you don't play creatures anyways. So, this thing actually I think does get played in that mill deck. Modern mill,
Nah.
I don't know about that one. Maybe as like a one of out of the sideboard for funsies to be cute, but like I don't know about there. And then Standard, does mill exist in Standard?
So it also could be self-mill. So in Standard, we don't really have the pieces to build a mill your opponent out, but we do have like stuff that wants our graveyard full and it can just target ourselves. So maybe that's the possibility. I don't think it can make it a modern.
What's the
Like
upside of that?
Like growing your goy for Urborg lure goy for whatever. Like, yeah, something like that.
Wow, we're really building around the Lurgoyfs. All right,
it's a Goyf cast.
So we're just like trying to spike a Goyf price, right? Is that what we're trying to do?
It is 4 mana mill 15. That's not a horrible rate. Or 3 mana mill, what, 9? It's not.
I mean,
Wait, what are we talking about?
the minus X, right? Because it's
minus
target
X, yeah.
minus X.
Oh, you're
First off,
gonna minus X it.
let's
Yeah,
talk
just
about
play
what
it
it
for the
does.
Minus X is
ultimate.
irrelevant.
So
Interesting.
we haven't read out what it actually does. It's 2 blue and Phyrexian blue.
No,
until
we read
you're-
it already. It was just so bad that
No.
you forgot about it.
We were
Oh
laughing.
wow! I just
We were
ignored
laughing
it.
as
It's
Richard
like
read
wow,
it, yeah.
this card's bad. Well,
You were
either
just
way,
crying over what we gave as Jace as his like parting gift
I
to
was
Magic.
I was waiting for me to be hit with. But what else does it do?
like the -2 is where it's at, right? Like you have to ancestral recall off of it. Otherwise, this card is like utter doo doo, right?
And even that,
I
it's
mean-
a -2. That could have been a -1 at least. Like
Yeah.
you use it every turn. Like it seems
Okay,
like they just went
-1 is
so
ridiculous
safe.
if you if you already have it, right?
Well, let's just say
Yeah.
you play this on 3, right? Because again, I don't know what Seth's talking about. I've never seen a 4. This is 4. Look, Phyrexian symbol. That means okay, cool. I'm taking 2 always. Like
Okay. Okay. So you play it
So-
for 3.
So you play it for 3. It comes down with 3 loyalty, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
you can minus
And-
2 it, or you can
So you
mill
-2, you
6
get that.
or
That's
9.
okay. You can -2 to mill 6, which is pretty great, right? Then God, that -2
Is it?
very
Well, minus-
problematic. Yeah, 'cause
-2,
it's
you
target
only
player
mill
mills
3, right?
No. You can -2 loyalty counters. You target player mills 3
Yeah, yeah.
times X cards.
Oh, the ultimate. Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
doo-doo
yeah,
though, right?
I can
Like, you
come
don't
down and I can-
spend- You
No,
don't
but
spend
the-
3 mana to mill 6 cards in constructed formats, right?
That could be okay in the weirdest matchups, maybe. Like, okay, so believe it or not, I do actually run into a lot of control decks on the ladder.
Okay,
And-
so when you guys have no finishers and
the
you're playing that
-2
100 like turn sweater,
The
to
-2
use
is
this
Nefeliad
-2 to build
Roundyard,
someone
yeah.
out.
Yeah,
That's
we're
Nefeliad
drowned
Roundyard.
here. I mean, I'm not even joking. Like, I think this card might be somewhere in the sideboard if control picks up. I don't know. Look, think about how many good 3 mana planeswalkers there are. Okay, let's just think of it that way first. What 3 mana planeswalkers do we have in stand? We have Lily, right? She's the bar, right? And
Yeah.
that's where we're looking at. Then we have
Are we
obviously
attempting to
Nahiri.
say Jace is better than Liliana of the Veil? Is
No.
that-
Jace is comfortably worse than Liliana. But although you get to put Jace down and planeswalkers that can ult immediately, Narset part of the Veils, this thing take Wandering Emperor, like this card could be randomly good. Maybe I'm copiuming myself here.
Remember-
Okay, this card is pretty bad. It's pretty bad, and I don't know why it's so bad. I just want him to be good. Okay,
So,
he's got a bunch of Ethernet cables attached to him. That's got to be cool, right?
somehow Jace has disproved the old logic that 3 mana planeswalkers are always better than they look. Like, we've gotten like 3 or 4 3 mana Jaces in a row that have all just been horrible. Jace has like proved that just being 3 mana is not enough to make a planeswalker good. And this
Someone
is another
hates
one.
Jace. Jace is reverse Chandra. Like every Jace
It really
that comes out,
is.
like so bad. Like,
Reverse power creep, yeah.
could they not just make a playable Jace? Like, are people that traumatized from the Mind Sculptor? Like, why? If
you
you're
know
gonna make
what?
a mill Jace, which is already questionable, right? Because you can only play him in mill decks. Like, why don't you make him a good? like make it the
Yeah.
best card in your mill deck, right? Like instead of
Nah.
being like the
I
last
might
slot
play
that you
it,
added
yeah.
for pity. Right?
What if okay, but hear me out though. Like seriously though, would that be too busted if he had the passive of Brewhawk?
Yes, because then it would be
Yes,
pay
'cause
4
it'd be just 3 mana
30.
Bluehawk, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it'd be
why
pay
not?
4 mil 30 or pay 3 mil 18. Then it would be the
Yeah.
best mill spell ever printed. Like,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
It's the
So-
perfected mind. It's not the half
He
completed
needs
mind.
to go back to the drawing board and perfect
Like-
everything.
Right, this doesn't read the perfected mind. This is just definitely the rough drafted mind. Like this is not good.
Okay, but we
poor
we
Jace.
think he's not dead. Right? They killed too many planeswalkers, right? They're gonna just magically find
Easy.
some serum that uncompletes everyone. Is that what we're
What did we just do last set? Time travel. I'm not
No.
even joking.
Are we
Like,
here? We got to time travel to undo the timeline.
Isn't
Yeah,
that like the most shark jumping storyline? Isn't that so unsatisfying? It's just like, you're all in a dream. It never really happened.
I mean,
come on,
which
Wazzy.
one's worse? They were always dead or time traveling? Either way, both are going to be unsatisfying. But at this point, I don't think these characters are dead, right? I mean, you can leave Nissa dead, but like the thing is, like the for the most part, there's no way, right? That they gave their Mickey Mouse an oil change, and I will say that it is cute though, because like Vraska and Jace, you know, they both got an oil change. However, I don't think they stay that way. There's no way. I mean, maybe Luca stays dead too, or stays completed. They're not dead; they're just completed. But yeah,
I don't know. I think it's possible they're completed, but Jace makes it seem unlikely. Would they actually give up on the face of the game? Jace for the last decade has been.
I mean,
essentially
they should
face
if he
of
just
magic.
keeps being that bad. Like they should just let him go.
I mean,
Just
maybe
let me-
that was their plan. They had
Maybe
to.
Teferi's the face of the game.
Yeah. Oh no. Oh no. Bring back Jace.
I mean,
Bring him back.
Teferi's continually been like super powerful, and they keep printing Teferi.
I mean, yeah, kind of like
Maybe
that. I
they
like that.
printed like 5 bad Jaces in a row so they would be able to kill him off without people getting so upset because there's so many bad versions now. Because
I thought they were doing this. Dude, he's gotten so bad, and he's gotten even more fringe each time. Like he's like what he does. It's like this should honestly like how is this the completed mind or the perfected mind? Like this is like oh
Flavor
man,
fail.
Yeah.
oh.
And with that, I think we're out of time. So there's actually a lot more cards. There's actually one card we didn't
So
talk
many.
about, which gives all your planeswalkers the ability to proliferate. Check out
Oh.
Eager Moon Gauntlet on
That card is
FTG
terrible.
previews. And maybe we'll talk about it next week. No Fishmail this week. We'll get back to Fishmail next week. So thank you, everyone, for listening. Seth, I'll throw it over to you.
And I believe that brings us to the end of episode 417 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. So Richard and Crib, thanks for hanging out. Thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks to Card Conduit for supporting this show. And we'll be back next week to talk more Phyrexia, All Will Be One, and whatever else goes on in the world of Magic. So until then, have a great week, everyone. And this is the crew signing out.